Hello, I'm Candid Frank Stanishi of Candid Frank Live. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now, joining me, what the heck? Okay, now joining me is Aaron William Freeland. Aaron, I'm just having a little bit of trouble with my page.
No
Let
worries.
and I don't know what to do to fix it, man. Okay, well
Unfortunately, I
let's.
can't troubleshoot from here. I'm about as useless at these sorts of
No,
things
no,
as
no,
you
no.
are.
Don't worry about that. No, it's basic. Can you see me? Okay.
I can see you just fine. Can you see
Okay, so
me?
that's all that matters. Yes, yeah. No, I can't see you. That's the problem.
Oh,
So I
okay.
won't worry about it. I won't worry about it. I'll just have to imagine that pretty face. I just
Perfect.
I'm trying to get it to work and it's not working. Okay, welcome to the show, everybody. And let's talk first about the CFL. A lot of news in the Canadian Football League. And of course, the Calgary Stampeders have played with the contract of Bo Levi Mitchell to keep him in Calgary. They dropped 40 grand off his contract to maintain his bonus. Good deal for him. So he basically copped. They took a $40,000 haircut.
Yeah, I mean it's a small thing, but in the world of the CFL, that's quite a chunk of change. So I'm glad that they've actually managed to work it so they can keep him. He has been the beating heart of that franchise for a few years now, so I'm glad that they've managed to keep him around.
Edmonton Elks rework quarterback Nick Arbuckle's contract for 2022. They go the other way. They add some bonus money, so guaranteed money.
Yeah, no, they added an extra little chunk of change for him there. At the same time, reducing his in-season contract. So I think that changes the cap hit and the structure of it slightly, which allows them to do a little bit more with the money they have.
They also signed two same team Edmonton two-player transactions on Thursday. Maxime Royer and Chris Nelson.
Yeah, glad to see them get re-signed. They put in a lot of work last year. It's good to see them get rewarded.
Former CFL player Obi Khan seeks Tory nomination for Manitoba by-election.
So yeah, this is one person who decided he wanted to continue to serve his community after having played for the Blue Bombers. He currently also owns 6 restaurants, so he's looking to get the PC nomination in Winnipeg's Fort White constituency.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Montreal Alouettes hire CFL legend Anthony Calvillo as quarterback coach.
So glad to see that he's going to be doing something post retirement here. Yeah, as you know, as a lot of people know, fans of the CFL will know, he tortured the Argonauts for a decade at least.
Tortured the league. Tortured the league, buddy.
That too. But I think he's reuniting with Machioka, with Danny, the general manager there, so that'll be good. He's going to be working with Kari Jones, so that'll be good as well.
Yes, that is important. All right, and also the Blue Bombers sign All-Star defensive ends Jefferson and Jeffcoat, two key players for them for sure.
Well, this is all part of them working towards a three-peat. So, they've had their two in a row, 2019 and 2021. So, this is a chance for them to try to solidify their legacy by going for a third, and getting those two signed is a huge part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. There he is. I got you there, Aaron. I got you
Excellent.
fixed. While you were talking, I fixed it. There he is. I see him. All right. So that's the Canadian Football League. Let's talk about the National Hockey League. And of course, the Toronto Maple Leafs, they placed forwards Pierre Engvall and Mitch Marner into the NHL's COVID-19 protocol.
I think the indication was that Marner had tested positive, but was experiencing very light symptoms, and Pierre Engvall was placed in there as a precautionary measure. Um, Now this is kind of interesting because Marner had just come back off injury and was working towards getting back into the lineup. So yesterday, the Maple Leafs actually placed forward Nick Ritchie on waivers as a way to get him onto the taxi squad. He cleared this afternoon, so that means that he will be riding taxi for the Leafs for the near future.
Nobody else wanted him.
I mean, it's a horror. Let's be honest with you. It's not the most friendly of deals for teams that are cash strapped, and a lot of teams in the league are.
Well, I've been pretty hard on Dubas, but I got to say, if this is the only mistake he made over the offseason last year, not a bad mistake because now this physical player, right? That the Leafs have, they can now leave him in the American Hockey League, leave him in the on the taxi squad, whatever it is they decide to do. And when truculence is more at a premium, like the playoffs, they can bring him in. He's a big body, right, Aaron? And right now, that big body isn't getting around the ice.
No, unfortunately, it's not. I mean, they were counting on him at some points for some Daryl Boyce kind of assists, where he just stands in front of the net blocking out the sun, but that hasn't really worked out.
No.
So,
no. The Montreal Canadiens extend COVID-19 pause through Saturday. Canadiens GM. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say they were planning originally on coming back a little bit earlier. I believe they were actually planning on coming back today. Their league game against the Leafs had already been suspended on Thursday, so there was no concern about that part of it. But with the fact that 22 Habs players and 2 coaches are currently in the NHL's COVID protocols, it makes it a little bit difficult to do anything.
Lots of word coming out of general manager possibilities in Montreal. It's going to be interesting. I'm hoping they do become the first hockey team in the NHL to hire a female GM.
Well, I mean, there are some good candidates out there. We've got Emily Castonguay, who's a former player agent and a former player in the NCAA with
she's
the
very inside. She's an insider. Yeah, she truly
definitely
is.
There's also Danielle Savageau, who's also in the running as well. She began coaching women's minor hockey. She's basically been described actually as the female Pat Burns, which is an interesting comparison.
Oh boy!
So, yep, and I mean she's been a GM and an executive. Yeah,
he was pretty successful. So it's a nice comparison, I think.
Exactly. Some of the other front runners are also Marc Denis, who's been in the running, and a couple others.
He's been around. Yeah, I think the first one's my pick, but that's just me. Ottawa Senators, Josh Norris returned to practice from his NHL COVID stint.
So that's good news for the Senators. As they're slowly getting back into games. I believe their next 2 have been canceled, one against the Hurricanes and the other against the Canucks. So they're still extending that. This will give the rest of the team time to round back into shape after a couple of weeks off. And again, the NHL here is citing attendance restrictions for canceling these games. So the good news is we still have 3 weeks during the Olympic break where NHLers won't be going to the Olympics to get that patched up and get them caught back up to speed.
The Sasktel Center, which is the hockey rink in Saskatchewan, there was some conversations that Winnipeg would be playing there. Those conversations ended, but the word got out.
Yeah, so loose lips sink ships. But the Winnipeg Jets, the group that owns the Winnipeg Jets, had actually asked their season ticket holders if there was any potential interest in playing in other venues.
No.
Yeah, no.
No. If I'm getting a choice.
I have a feeling one of their primary sponsors, Canada Life, might have been a little upset over them trying to move to a different arena, seeing as they just purchased the naming rights.
Yeah. Well, then did you hear the other one about the Leafs playing in Buffalo? Really? You really think the Leafs would play in Buffalo?
Well, I mean, the whole idea behind them probing playing in Saskatchewan was that Manitoba currently limits professional sports venues or concerts to 50% or 250 people.
Right.
But Saskatchewan has no restrictions.
Right.
So True North was trying to get a little bit more money into their coffers by, hey, what if we go here? You guys can actually watch the games.
Well, I think the move by Bettman and the National Hockey League is kind of brilliant. Really, I don't usually agree with what he does, and there's always an ulterior motive to what he does. And in this case, he can take the side of Canadian teams and not be a bad egg to the American teams. So this is a unique position for him. This is at one time where he can side with the Canadian teams, and the American teams won't say, "What are you doing? Why are you doing it? We don't like when you do that. You don't help them." So he's helping the teams, and you know what? They're talking now about the All-Star game being paused as well. And that's another what, 3-4 days that they can insert games.
Yeah.
They can reschedule games into. I think that's the smart thing to do. There's no point having an all-star game. It really isn't that important in the grand scheme of things, Aaron, right?
No, I mean, let's be honest. The fines that they have for players that don't attend if they're selected are a joke as well.
One game.
Hey, Ovechkin always looked at it as an extra day off. It's why he doesn't bother to go anymore. He'll go for the skills competition.
Remember the Russian Rocket?
Pavel
He went
Bure,
to
yeah.
that. Yeah, remember? No, not the Russian Rocket. I'm sorry. I'm not talking about him. Anyway, yeah, it happened. It happens. It happens. Players will do it even on purpose. They don't care. They'll take the day off. It's fine with them. They'd rather not go. And if they feel it's not worth it, they're not going to go. If you have that much jam with the team, they'll do whatever you say. There's no problem. Landeskog gets a hat trick for the Avalanche against the Jets. The Jets didn't look that good in this game. They've been playing well, but not this night.
We were watching part of the game last night, and when we flipped away, it was 1-1. By the time we flipped back, it was 4-1, and it was, I think, one commercial break on a home and garden television show that we were watching. Michelle and I both looked at each other and went, "What happened?"
Nazem Kadri's been a revelation.
He he's always been that kind of player. He's explosive. He distributes the puck well. It's just the issue that a lot of people had with him is the fact that he goes brain dead and it costs the team.
I think I'm going to say this, and for you folks out there are too young, Aaron and company, almost everybody's too old to remember this. But Gordie Howe had the same problem. He was getting too many penalties. I mean, in fact, the Gordie Howe hat trick, a fight, a goal, and an assist. He needed to calm down. And there are other players in the National Hockey League historically that have Brendan Shanahan, another guy that at the beginning of his career needed to calm down, was just way too aggressive, and then try to redirect that aggression into the game itself as opposed to the players within the game. Nazem Kadri has been able to do that. I don't know when his next suspension is going to happen, but hopefully the suspensions are further apart as he gets older, right? They'll need to be because they'll be longer each time he gets one. So, it is what it is, but I really like the kid. He's a hard worker. He's an honest player. And, the trouble he got into is because he was a good teammate, that you were on his side, and he didn't play for the right team. If he hadn't played for Toronto, half the suspensions he got, he wouldn't have got.
No, it's true. And he definitely gets targeted. Now, he also used to draw a lot of penalties.
Absolutely.
But not so much anymore. He's falling into the same sort of category as Austin Matthews and Connor McDavid has. Usually, when it comes to players and player incidents, you're going to find players drawing penalties at the rate of about 1 every 250 to 300 incidents of contact.
Okay.
Austin Matthews hasn't drawn a penalty in almost 400 cases of contact. So they're definitely and it's the same thing that goes for Kadri. They're calling less and less. They got to a certain point where they're like, we've given you enough. We're not going to call any more penalties on you for a while. So get used to it.
Well, they've got that kid to replace him on the line with Matthews, and they same style of play, right? Gets under your skin. You do stuff you shouldn't do to him. That's a big advantage. The Calgary Flames, Kucherov has 2 assists in return. Lightning beat Flames 4-1.
This is just a few short days after the Lightning pantsed them 6-2. So it's been a bit of a rough road for Calgary in the past little while. But a 3-goal third period will kind of do that to you. It'll break a game open really quick.
Edmonton has lost 11 of their last 13. Aaron, this team is struggling to find itself.
There have been a lot of rumors going around about what needs to be done to change things up. More currently, one of the biggest rumors going around is they're going to try to drag Babcock away from his university and bring him in to replace Coach Tippett. That was one of the things that we were looking at here. The other is
going to that team until they have a goaltender.
No, and that's got to be their first priority.
No, seriously, he won't go to that team unless they have a goaltender, because Goaltenders and coaches, they live and die together. Especially a
Yep.
coach like Babcock who knows that and believes that. He's not going to go where there's not a goaltender.
So the question is then, did Freddie Anderson sink Mike Babcock?
Well, I don't think Freddie Anderson sunk Babcock. I think the fact that they didn't have a good set number 2 sunk Babcock. If you remember correctly, when Freddie was out of the net, just chalk up a loss. That's all you needed to do. There was not a win to be had. If you remember last year that Babcock was with the Leafs, and when I say last year, I talk about the last year from the time he was fired to the same time the year before. I think, if I remember correctly, in all the games that backups played, I think they only won 2 or 3 games, and that's like out of 20 or something, if you remember. So yeah, that if you can't have a backup win you a game, you're in trouble because you're giving up a loss every time that happens. And then it puts pressure on your starting goaltender because then he has to be that much more perfect. Campbell's a great goaltender. We're back at the Leafs again, by the way, folks, because we keep talking about them because that's usually who we talk about. Because they're not playing, there's not much chance. Hang on a second. I think it's for me.
I'm guessing the message says, stop talking about the Leafs.
No, it's my mother. Hang on.
Oh,
It's my mother.
I can hear you. Stop talking
Mom,
about the
I'm doing
Leafs.
a show. Leave me alone. Okay. I shouldn't say that. She cooked for me the whole week of Christmas and New Year. So, with the Leafs, we're talking about the Leafs. We're talking about goaltending, and we're talking about Babcock. The Maple Leafs, and then we got to Campbell.
Well, I mean, with Campbell, the Leafs actually found something they weren't expecting to find, which is fantastic. The only problem is now they had to find somebody to sufficiently back up. Back up Campbell, and Hutchinson wasn't going to be the answer. Mrazek has been injured. Riddick didn't quite cut it. Had a few other players in and out of that goalie carousel for a bit there, but
yeah. There's 2 messages. It's your mother. Why aren't you answering your phone? Actually,
911.
I accidentally answered the phone. I meant to hit the red button. I hit the green button. So she's gonna think something's wrong. But she's calling again. That's 3 times.
You want to take that one, Frank?
3 times. That's my mother. Anybody who knows it. Okay, what? Hang on. Yeah, Ma.
What happened?
I'm trying to do my show.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Poi parliamo.
Okay, ciao. Okay, now she won't call anymore. The good thing about being 94, I should have just answered the first time, but I didn't. But anyway, yeah, with goaltending for the Leafs, they've got a good goaltender. If they can somehow, they gotta figure out, Aaron. And I paid Dubas a compliment by saying that if the guy that they've sent down to the taxi squad or the Marlies, he's got $2.5 million on his contract next year. If they can make him disappear, there's $2.5 million. If they can make Mrazek disappear, that's another $2.5 million. And with the million that Campbell's getting now, I think 1.5 he's getting, that's $6.5 million. You seeing my point?
Yeah. No, there's a lot of money tied up there for not much return, unfortunately, which is a situation a lot of teams find themselves in.
Absolutely, you're right. I have to agree with you 100% that no team doesn't make mistakes. The only problem is some teams, for whatever reason, they hit the jackpot and they're able to control the finances of the team for whatever reason. I'm sure there's lots of reasons, and we could probably state them all here today. We talk now about the Oilers. We went on a tangent because of the Oilers, because quite frankly, McDavid is the best player in the world, and many of us believe that Draisaitl is probably the best player in the world once in a while too. They've got 2 of the players that undoubtedly are the best players in the world, but they can't turn it into something. I mean, we've watched how many teams have we seen over history, Aaron, that have 2 superstars of that value and they win Stanley Cups? right? I mean, you got Lemieux when he was playing. You put him beside a defenseman maybe, and then or maybe a forward, Yager, right? They found a way to win. Right now, you've got Crosby, right, in there.
Crosby and
He did it
Malkin.
with he did it with Malkin and Kessel too, right? You look at Tampa. Mind you, Tampa has you look at Tampa, Stamkos and Kucherov, right? I mean, two pretty good players. And Stamkos, you step him back, and then you end up with the defenseman, right? That's the best in the world. So, you can have two of the best players on the team and win the Stanley Cup. The problem seems to be, and the Leafs have that problem a little bit in a sense. I don't think it's fair to say the Leafs have it. And to be fair, and if I were to be fair in the past, they had young guys that were that good. But once those players become mature, like a Crosby, right? At some point, talented players have to be a reason why the team wins too, right? Not just that they succeed and rise to the top echelon of the league. They also have to somehow bring their team to that level. Crosby has done it. In Boston, we've seen it with Chara. He's brought his team to that level. Chicago, we saw Kane, do that.
Now, I mean, I'm looking at the Oilers lineup here, and I'm thinking another part of their problem is they've got Mikko Koskinen signed for $4.5 million a year. And you've got Mike Smith at the age of 39. That spry young spring chicken Mike Smith at the age of 39 signed for 2.2 for another 2 years.
I think you've highlighted the problem.
Yeah.
I mean, for years, the Philadelphia Flyers have had great teams. Not so much recently, but there have been years where they had some really good teams, but they couldn't get a goalie in there, and that's a pretty heavy curse, right?
And I mean, there are a lot of coaches that have fallen under that. I mean, you look at a guy like Paul Maurice, who's stepped away from the Jets now. I don't think, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 years, he's ever had a goalie that could potentially have taken him anywhere in the playoffs.
I don't know. I think he has a pretty good goaltender. Well,
Hellebuck is streaky, though. I mean, that's the problem. He's hot and cold. Depending on which way the wind is blowing, you're either getting a Vezina-worthy performance out of him, or he's got more holes than Michael Hutchinson and Garrett Sparks.
Wow, I didn't think he was that bad. Remind me not to invite him over with you.
No, I'll be nice to his face.
Okay.
I'm just mean on TV.
Can you turn around for a second so I can stab you in the back?
I'm gonna talk about you behind your back. Just turn around.
So we've established that the Oilers need to change things up.
They do.
Yeah, and we know that one of the biggest concerns they have is over goaltending. And there's rumors. Can you imagine? There's rumors that they need a change in goaltending. Gee, I guess the coach saying our goaltending sucks is a rumor? Or is that like...
I didn't want to believe Koskinen's reply at first. I actually had to look it up. In the 6 games that he's played that he lost with the Oilers, they only scored 7 goals.
Right.
He scored more than 1 goal once, and that was in an overtime loss to the Islanders. And I mean, he's got a valid point. He's got to be better. Don't get me wrong. An .877 save percentage is nothing to write home about. That's not a lacrosse goalie save percentage. But at the same time, the team's got to score more than 1 goal a game for him.
Absolutely. And this is what we said about the ex-Leaf goalie.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So yeah, goaltending matters, and goaltending is not just about a goaltender. We've established that. So there's another reason why a team, a goaltender looks bad. If they lose a lot of games because the team doesn't score, and then it's their turn, when it's their turn to be judged, they make a mistake. Of course, they get blamed for the rest of the games, which is what I think you were trying to say when you said I had to look up what he said. Because then that tells you if in the 6-game stretch, they only stretch. I wanted to say both those words at the same time, and they only score 6 out of 7. 7 out of in 6 games. That's a problem. The Vancouver Canucks center Elias Pettersson enters NHL COVID protocol. Oh boy.
Yeah, this does nothing for anybody.
Chase
they had problems with COVID last. year. Yeah, Alex Chason tested COVID. Elias Pettersson has now gone into the COVID-19 protocol. One of those really not a very good, very bad, totally awful day. Honestly, though, Pettersson's had a rough season. Six goals and 11 assists in 34 games so far. But he joins Brock Besser, Phil DiGiuseppe, Justin Dowling, and Jason Dickinson in COVID protocol. So it is what it is.
I got a point to make, and I hope I remember it when we're doing COVID. Norris ready to go after NHL's COVID-19. Norris being, of course, Josh of Ottawa.
Yep. So he's out again. So that's good to see. Getting back up to speed.
Hockey PI suspends player for anti-Asian remark aimed at an opponent.
So this time, because it's not the first time this has happened, but this time there were racial slurs that were leveled at a player at the junior B level. It's a 2-game suspension to a 19-year-old member of the Kensington Vipers. It was for comments that player made to a member of the Sherwood Metros during a December 17th game in Kensington. This case was bumped up to the top directly, according to Hockey PEI Executive Director Connor Cameron. He said because this issue is racial in nature and severe, this issue has been moved right to the top of what they were dealing with it. They received a written complaint from the victim on December 18th, and there was a January 3rd interview by video conference, and then the suspension was handed down. So,
this is just not necessary, and we've got to teach our youth. I mean, it was a 19-year-old, so
he should know better
at that age.
Now, the problem that we have here is the Sherwood Metros were a little upset about it too. One of the offended player's teammates, Keegan Mitchell, broke his stick over the offending player's leg and got a 2-game suspension for it. They didn't obviously believe his reasons at the time as to why he did it. But he stood up for his teammate and was
still not the right thing to do. Violence.
No. I'm not condoning violence. Understand? But
yeah, no, I know. But what you're saying is he just didn't turn around and go, I think I'll slash him and break my stick over his legs.
Exactly. There's got to be a reason for it, right?
Yeah. Well, it's not. It's a reason, but not a justifiable one. Antonio Brown finally released by the Bucks. What a zoo! This is a tire fire.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse, and the player involved doesn't really help himself all that much. But he went after Tom Brady's trainer, and Bruce Arians until finally they just said, look, for the sake of team cohesion, we got to let you go, bud, because you're not helping. So
for those of you that haven't followed this, it's basically a coach tells the player to get the out. Player strips and leaves. Then we find out the player had some bonuses. He wasn't going to reach them. He didn't talk about not getting the targets. Other people said that he wasn't getting targets so that he could reach those bonuses. Claims that he was injured, and there's proof that he was injured. The coach knew he was injured, and yet here he is. What doesn't sell what he says is the way he was running around. He ran around quite a patch of the field, and he wasn't hobbled. What I saw, he wasn't hobbled. I'm sure the injury for him to do cuts in that might be a different story, but you know what I mean. When he says that kind of stuff and he's running around the field.
Well, there was also a video that surfaced of him working out on a trampoline. So if it's an ankle injury, you got to wonder how he's doing that and working out on a trampoline, which is definitely not easy on the ankles.
I don't get it. I don't understand it. And it's the bonus money. I get it. It's a lot of money. The bonus money was a lot of money, but the bonus money is nothing compared to the contract or, Aaron, the next contract you sign. But he's been very fortunate. He has burned bridges wherever he's been, and thankfully there's 32 teams out there. So he's still got about 85% of the teams to go to.
Well, I'm sure they'll get to him eventually.
Well, there's talk that somebody might want him for the playoffs. And there's not enough time for him to be a toxic member of the dressing room, of the locker room.
If you get him in short term and he's only there for a quick stint, then you may not necessarily have to worry about it. So
this one here, I want to pause on this one. Aaron Rodgers, he's an anti-vaxxer, understood. He's a guy who is a bit dishonest with people. He implied that he was vaccinated. He wasn't. He tried to squirm off that hook and suggest that, well, I meant that I had COVID and now I have the antibodies. He tried squirming off the hook, but the fact is he isn't vaccinated, was never vaccinated, and doesn't believe in being vaccinated. Then you have a reporter who decides to go public with the fact that he's planning on not voting for him before the vote. And the reason he's not going to vote for him is basically because of his character, and his reputation and or relationship with his team, and the organization, right? Your turn.
Well, I believe that Arkish had a point. I don't necessarily think he was wrong. Now, in all fairness, he didn't reveal who he was going to be voting for, which obviously they're not supposed to do. He just said who he wasn't voting for.
Well, I'm going to have to prop myself on the other side of where you are. I'm not as far over to this side, but I'm going to go completely to the other side just for the sake of, devil's advocacy. He doesn't have any right to judge somebody's personality. He's voting on a player and how he plays the game. Are we saying then if a racist is a reporter that he can't vote for somebody because they're white or black or Asian or...
I'm not one to cast aspersions on reporters or previous NFL MVP ballots, but I certainly think if you have an undisclosed bias against a certain race, it would probably taint your voting record into not voting for individuals of that race. Now, we would never know.
And it would be incorrect. And it would be incorrect.
We would never know because you wouldn't tell us who you were actually voting for.
But that's what I'm saying. If somebody came out and said, I'm not voting for him because he's white, what would happen to that reporter?
Yeah, but you see, I think Rodgers' behavior, both on and off the field, is detrimental to his teammates because as an anti-vaxxer, he could potentially infect teammates and cause a shutdown.
That's an opinion.
That's a problem.
That's an opinion.
It's a very real possibility, Frank.
But still an opinion. That the opinion I'm saying, why I'm saying it's an opinion, is that within the context of the National Football League and their protocols, he's not doing anything wrong. I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but what I am saying is he can't be judged for what he's doing in as far as being an anti-vaxxer and not getting a vaccine if the league approves his being there. So we can't judge him about that. The same thing in the Canadian Football League. A lot of Canadian Football League players that used to play in the NFL and can't play in the NFL, and many a player that can't play in the NFL, all for this one reason, smoking pot, they can do it in the Canadian Football League. So, it's not about choosing right and wrong here that I'm talking about. I'm talking about a level playing field. Ha ha, we're talking about sports. And the level playing field, as they all have a right to play in the NFL until they don't. If a player is in good standing in the NFL, then, and if they're a great player, they have a right to be judged for what they do on the field of play. Everything else shouldn't matter. If he's a Republican, shouldn't matter. If he's a Democrat, shouldn't matter. If he's an anti-vaxxer, I'm going to say it shouldn't matter. It just shouldn't matter. Now, in the other context, where I fall. I agree with you 100% outside of the NFL. But as long as he's playing by the rules that the NFL and the protocols the NFL is laying out there, Aaron, he has every right to do that, in my opinion. I do not agree with it. I think I like you. I think he's a danger to his teammates. He's a danger to his teammates' family. He's a danger to his teammates' elderly family. He's a danger to, if one believes, I'm qualifying this, if one believes that you can actually get the virus from somebody and give it to someone else.
But as far as the NFL is concerned, he's playing by their rules, so everything is okay.
Right. So you can't say something like that. The reporter should have used his inside voice. And the inside voice I mean is inside his head.
Oh no,
because he's not talking alone. Like what he said, Aaron, the point is, and I think you'll agree with me on this, he's probably not the only reporter that'll not vote for somebody because of a personal thing, whatever that personal thing might be, because they don't tell us who they didn't vote for and why, because some of the reasons they don't vote for would be would be interesting, to say the least.
That's the exception here. And all right, Arkush did say, look, there are no guidelines. We're told to pick the guy we think is most valuable for their team. I don't think it says anywhere strictly on the field. I
see your point.
Think, so, but it's like, yeah.
I see. No, I see your point that you're saying that he had, which is how they interrelate with the players on the team does work towards their value to the team, because we hear it all the time, right? He's a great teammate. Well, that has nothing to do with the way he plays on the field. He's a great teammate, right? He's a great leader. Well, sometimes the leadership qualities that a player has have nothing to do with how they are on the field. It has to do with how they practice, what they're like in the locker room. So to your point, I bow to that point. It well made. Congratulations.
Now, Rogers has, of course, fired back. Not one to take anything lying down. He straight up called the reporter an absolute bum.
Yeah, and that's okay. That's okay. Obviously, okay. Let's talk about a player in good standing, one that's retired. Nowitzki, 41. Goes back to Dallas.
Apparently, he was offered a 10-day so that he could officially retire as a Dallas Maverick, and I think they actually needed the help.
Yeah.
No, I'm really happy for Dirk. That was a
well deserved,
nice gesture. So
one of the original international players that really opened the eyes of the NBA to take a look over the sea, on the other side of the ocean, because he's one of the guys that showed that European players play really well, and the Raptors are thankful because Masai Ujiri said, "Hey, Africa has some pretty good players too." So, all these players that come from a lot of places, Dirk Nowitzki deserves a lot of credit for it. And of course, he deserves a lot of credit for being a great Dallas Maverick. In fact, he was his whole career, which is pretty unusual in itself.
Yeah, he beat Kobe's record of 20 years by 1.
Good for him.
So, yeah, no, that's fantastic.
Good for him. The Heat star Kyle Lowry ejected for tossing a ball back to the official in a wild sequence.
This was a really, really weird, really weird case. After the play had broken down, there were some fouls to be handed out, and Lowry tossed the ball underhand with no malice. It wasn't a chest pass. It wasn't a hard bouncer. It was just a here ref. And the ref
didn't know it was coming. The ref didn't know it was coming.
The ref got surprised and decided that there was malicious intent and turfed him.
Well, that's because he made him look bad.
Well, and it's all about making the referees look good, isn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't malicious at all. And in fact, you could tell by the reaction of the announcers. They're going, "What just happened? What happened? What happened there? Kyle Lowry just got it. What? What did he get a technical for? Oh, he threw the ball he didn't throw it at the ref. He threw it to the ref.
Well, in the ref's general direction.
He's an ex-Raptor. We cut him all the slack he needs.
Of course we do.
And the present-day Raptors beat Milwaukee Bucks 117-111.
Yeah,
of course, Milwaukee was minus their star.
Wow, that's true. But the Raptors are just coming out of COVID protocols themselves. None of them really. I mean, they were missing a few, but the way things actually worked out for the Raptors, I'm glad. They do need a string of victories, so this is another one for them. I'm very pleased with that. So we'll have to see. The Raptors have worked themselves up to third in the Atlantic now, so we'll see where they go from there.
Absolutely. For some, especially those in, I think it's Serbia, isn't it? they're protesting Djokovic unable to play in the Australian Grand Slam, the Australian Open. He needs this win to win the most Grand Slams in tennis history.
Yeah. Now, there was a bit of a political firestorm over his medical exemption for COVID-19. But
Yes.
in addition to that, it turns out his team filed the wrong visa paperwork, which wouldn't actually permit him to participate by the rule of law, because they didn't fill it out completely, would be unable to participate in the tournament itself. Now, yeah, it's one of those situations where it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. I mean, he tried to start his own breakaway tournament with unvaccinated players and no COVID protocols that ended up getting shut down because of COVID.
Oh, boy, who saw that coming?
Oh, wow. Sort of things.
Who saw that
he did receive his exemption from the Victorian government. While the reason for his medical exemption was not fully released, he said it was on the basis that he had contracted COVID in the past 6 months. So He's had the disease. He's dealt with it before. He knows how crappy it can be. But the claims are that he's being held hostage in what is essentially a war zone style hotel in the middle.
What it actually is are illegal aliens who come to Australia and they get caught, and this is where they get sent to wait till they get extradited or whatever,
deported,
deported. That's all it is. But you know what? He's a guy who does not stay in Class C hotels. This is a guy who stays in AAA hotels, and I'm not talking about AAA either. He's someone who a lot of people don't root for. He's not easily well liked, right? But he has to be respected for what he's done.
Yeah. I guess you kind of got to give him credit for what he's accomplished, even if he's not exactly the most likable person in the world. So there it is.
Nearly 5,000 layoffs at Cineplex after Ontario closes movie theaters.
So the head of Cineplex was actually heard saying, suck it up. We're gonna have to deal with it. But 5,000 people, part-time employees, have now been laid off because of the mandated closures of Ontario movie theaters just due to the Omicron outbreak. So it's tough times for everybody. Now, the good news is that they are bringing back the CERB, and they are bringing back other employee benefits. It's not as much as it was before, but it's at least something to try to get you through. So while it is unfortunate, hopefully this will be done soon, and we'll be able to get everybody back in.
We're going to be doing some COVID stuff. It's going to be interesting. Ontario to charge off-peak rates for electricity while provinces modified step 2 of reopening plan.
So this is a bit of a relief. By charging these off-peak rates, you're getting a little bit of a break on your electricity prices. And seeing as a lot more people are going to be staying at home now, you're going to be paying 8.2 cents per kilowatt hour for the next 3 weeks, starting January 18th, as opposed to the higher 11.4 cents per kilowatt hour, which is the peak hour price. So
the 3 men convicted in Ahmaud Arbery killing get life in prison, no parole for father and son.
No. So for those 3 individuals who were guilty of chasing him down, attempting to forcibly confine him, and eventually beating him to death, they will be facing life in prison for their crimes, without the possibility of parole, as you mentioned. So this is at least a positive note to come out of this horrific situation out of the States. I'm just glad that somebody finally had the intestinal fortitude to release the video in the first place, because had that video not been leaked, those 3 individuals would probably still be out and about.
Yeah, and their lies would have been believed, because it's what we need to do. William Roddy Bryan, he gets a chance to earn parole after 30 years in jail, considering I don't have it here, but I believe he's 52. So he could get parole at age 82.
Which, cool.
Dog keeps stranded injured hiker warm for 13 hours by lying on top of him. We've seen these stories before.
Yeah, so this was for a hiker in the Croatian mountains. Gerga Burkic fell and was unable to get back up again. The other 2 hikers that were with him could not reach him, and they could not reach his dog North, so they called for help. So the good news is the 8-month-old dog named North is an Alaskan Malamute. I don't know if you've ever run into those dogs before, Frank, but
Furry.
they are 90% fur,
Furry.
and it's a double coat, and they're very, very big dogs. My friend Jackie.
Well, actually, they're not very big, because if you shave them, they're only about this big. But otherwise,
well,
never mind.
My friend Jackie actually had a Malamute named Maxwell House. He was 195 pounds.
Holy crap! Oh
yeah,
my
big
gosh.
boy. So yeah, for 13 hours, this dog kept him warm, and that's like a little feel good story for you right there.
Yeah, no, it's not the first time we've heard. Thank goodness for a pet or an animal. It ends up with a good ending, which could have been easily a bad ending. Sidney Poitier, first black person to win an Oscar, first black man at least, dies at 94. This guy had an amazing career. To Serve with Love was an amazing movie. I know he won the movie. He won the Academy Award with Lilies, but I liked him in that movie.
From his first performance as a doctor in No Way Out, he followed that up by playing in Cry the Beloved Country, Blackboard Jungle. He got his first Oscar nom in '59 for The Defiant Ones.
Yep.
But he's had an absolutely stellar career. I know that when Denzel finally won his first Oscar, he said, "Hey, Sidney, I may be 44 years behind you, and I'll always be chasing you, but thank you for paving the way."
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is that he was an activist as well.
Yes,
and
he will be missed.
Yeah, he will be. I said this about 2 weeks ago. This story, they're paying attention to what I said. How Omicron may lift us out of the pandemic so that this becomes the last wave of Corona.
Well, I mean,
this could be good news.
Yeah, the virus keeps adapting and shifting and making itself weaker and weaker, but at the same time, more contagious. But at the same time, because it's making itself weaker and weaker, even though it is more contagious, we're more likely to live through it. That's getting the PA out of my endemic. So.
Yes, and turning this into I can't wait for the endemic.
Now, I have heard in Alberta they're starting to call it Flu-rona instead of Corona. But according to the medical officer of health, that's not a thing. Stop it.
I got to say this too. I read an article. I don't have it, and I wish I had have included it in here. But to make a long story short, the U.S. has far more emergency beds per capita than the Canadians do, and they're saying this is a big reason why. They're able to be open in the U.S. because they have a lot more room for people who get really sick. I think a lot of people are going to be asking that question. I know I will.
I mean, Doug Ford has been bragging about increasing the number of beds that are available. However, what he and his government seem to forget is it takes at least 6 staffers to work each bed. So while it's fantastic that the province is going to be adding 15,000 beds over the course of the next couple of years, where are the 90,000 nurses and doctors that are supposed to be working those beds?
They're in Florida.
Yeah, apparently.
I'm just saying. Suicides in Canada fell by 32% in the first year of the pandemic compared with the year before, report finds. That's surprising.
That was a very surprising statistic to me as well. When I had first initially heard about the story, I looked into it, and according to the information here, in the first year of the pandemic, when you would expect people to be more depressed.
Well, they were talking about people being more depressed. They were talking about people having drug issues, right?
Yeah, and it turns out that wasn't the case at all, which is, kind of surprising, but at the same time, lets you know that it is possible for people to get by this relatively unscathed. And for those of us with social anxiety, the isolation can actually help us as opposed to being bad for us. Less interactions with people could be a better thing.
Absolutely. Ontario hospitals urge pregnant people to get vaccines, cite infant COVID admissions. This has always been one of the main reasons why people do not want to take the vaccine. Many of them who are thinking of raising a family think that if they take the vaccine, it will do something to the child they hope to have in the future or the child that's, you know, growing in their body. And now we're
Well,
hearing this.
as it currently stands, the group, this is the ONA, the Ontario Nurses Association, has said that 6 babies younger than 12 months have been admitted to Hamilton and Ottawa facilities because of COVID-19 since the middle of December. All of the infants admitted to the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario in Ottawa had unvaccinated mothers.
Wow.
So please, they're saying that the infants' immune systems had difficulty fighting COVID, especially without maternal antibodies transferred during pregnancy from being vaccinated.
Right.
So
Half
something to
of
bear in
all
mind.
half of all people offered Moderna COVID-19 vaccine refused it, Ontario pharmacists say. That's what I had. That was my booster, was Moderna.
Yeah, it's interesting that at this point people are still vaccine shopping. I mean, you think you might have learned your lesson a little bit earlier, by
Well, if
everything
I
that you
had
had to
my
go through.
choice there, and I would have gone, I would have hoped to have gotten a Pfizer. I had the Pfizer twice, and I wanted to have it a third time.
So
Didn't
you
work
want
out
to go
that
for the
way.
3 of a kind, yeah?
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, but it didn't occur to me to turn it down. But again, I'm probably one of those sheep that the anti-vaxxers talk about.
Oh yeah, no. You know what? As somebody like myself who is going actively seeking the trifecta, I'm definitely one of those sheep that the anti-vaxxers are talking about. And if I wanted to make it a flush, I would have gone for the Johnson and Johnson.
Yeah, yeah, I hear that. Ontario nurses call on Doug Ford to move the province back to step 1 measures. What's up with that, man?
Well, and again, the ONA is just looking at what they're doing here and looking at the restrictions, saying, look, there are cracks in our health system as a result of the 5th wave that we're currently enduring. Those cracks include implementing a code orange at some hospitals, the cancellations of surgeries, and the shortage of registered nurses. The letter was not complimentary towards Doug Ford, let's be honest. The nurses had their opinion and they wanted to make it known. They did indicate that 2 actions are required to avert the full collapse of Ontario's health system. Move Ontario back to step 1 of Ontario's original roadmap to reopen, and repeal Bill 124. So that would top up compensation and improve working conditions for nurses, so they can keep those nurses who are currently working and maybe entice a lot of the nurses who have left to come back.
Absolutely. So Quebec expands vaccine passports, and how do they do it? So if you want to go to the liquor store or the cannabis store, you need it. And they're even talking about a third dose requirement as well. Boy, oh boy, don't tell people that they can't drink unless they have the second dose, I should say.
I am more worried about the pot smokers in this particular case here. I don't know if they'll have the wherewithal to get a 3rd shot after blazing one. So we'll have to see how that
Well,
works
we'll
out.
find out. Well, in the U.S., they were giving away joints if you got vaccinated there for a little while. Man arrested on charges of attacking vaccination clinic, injuring staffers he called murderers.
Yeah, well, this is guess the state.
Texas.
It's actually Southern California, actually Orange County, which is the Republican part of the state.
Oh, okay.
So, 2 staff members of Families Together of Orange County were injured in a December 30th attack on their mobile clinic in Tustin, California. One of the members was sent to hospital in an ambulance, but both workers are expected to make a full recovery. Thomas Apollo is the individual, 43 years, who entered the clinic and started accusing workers of being murderers who are making people sick before he just started trying to throw haymakers. So,
well, it takes all kinds, Aaron.
Yes, it does.
We're out of time, buddy.
I appreciate a well-rounded show, Frank.
Well, thank you, Aaron. And thank you for being here.
Pleasure.
Well, for Aaron William Freeland, I'm Candid Frank Stanishi. Thank you for watching Candid Frank Live. Aaron, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Candid Frank Live and other news and entertainment, sports programming we offer, check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everyone. Ciao for now. Have a great weekend.
I think he may have fallen asleep.
I think I put it to sleep. There it is. Do you want to call him or should I?
Oh, go for it. By the way, folks, welcome to Candid Frank Live Leaf Talk Edition After Hours. We're glad you could all still be with us here.
Well, okay, while we're here, we can talk about something else.
Sure. What do you got in mind?
I don't know. Just wondering what can we talk about?